Thank you all so much for coming to our Green Careers panel. Really appreciate it. My name's Livia. I'm the Student Sustainability Coordinator, so my job is to get students involved outside the classroom with climate action, environmental justice, sustainability here on campus. So I'm really glad you all made it for this panel. Feel free to leave, use the bathroom, get more food anytime, and we'll have some some moderated questions, and then we'll open it up for Q&A, okay? I'm just going to start with some opening words here. So here at UW-Tacoma, our guiding star is access for all students. We want to provide an education and social mobility for everybody in the community and also revitalize our downtown area. Before UW-Tacoma was here, this area was like abandoned and kind of scary. But before that, 100 years ago, downtown Tacoma was a bustling market area. It was the center of historic Japantown, and it was also home to an iconic open air market that was bigger than modern day Pike Place. And before that, this land was stewarded by the Puyallup tribe. So it's looked very different over time. And we tend to think of the story of Indigenous people as history, but I want to talk a little bit about the present day fight for the Puyallup tribe. They're still fighting for sovereignty and autonomy as a nation, not to mention fighting for reparations for the genocide that was committed against them. So probably the most tangible example of the current day Puyallup fight is related to the Port of Tacoma, which is right our own backyard, highly industrialized, former Superfund site, extremely toxic area. And I want to contextualize our conversation about green jobs in the reality of the place where we're located. Who has heard of the Medicine Creek Treaty? Who knows what the Medicine Creek Treaty is? The Medicine Creek Treaty is the treaty that the Puyallup people signed to ascribe land to them versus land to the colonizers. After the Medicine Creek Treaty was signed, the Port of Tacoma actually added new land. Land was dredged up, and there was new land added where the settlers said, I know we already decided whose land is whose, but we're going to make new land, and this is ours now. And on that land is where many of Tacoma's environmental atrocities take place. So on this newly added land, we have the liquefied natural gas facility, which is a ticking time bomb. Liquefied natural gas is often sold as a greener alternative to fossil fuels. It is flammable when it touches water. So why is it in the port of Tacoma? It was built illegally, which with much fighting from the Puyallup tribe. And if you want to learn about the modern history of tribal resistance, I highly recommend watching the documentary Water Warriors. This is recent history. This is still taking place in city council meetings and Puget Sound Clean Air Agency boardrooms. Tribal members are still showing up to fight for their autonomy and their rights in the port to this very day. The other, thing that I think about when I think about the port is the fossil fuel refinery. We have a fossil fuel refinery probably a mile away from us, and our state representative, Jake Fay, is fighting right now in our state legislature to exempt them from the financial responsibility that they have with the Climate Commitment Act. Boo! Can I get a boo? No fossil fuel refinery should be exempt from the Climate Commitment Act, okay? So I just want to contextualize this conversation. Green jobs are very important, but we need to think about stopping fossil fuel. We need to think about getting involved. If you come to the Earth Day celebration, you're going to meet a lot of local organizations that you can learn about their work and get involved in these fights. And, I want to give thanks to the tribal leadership that show the way, that work with our university to maintain a good working relationship. And also give thanks for the Indigenous people who are leading the way forward, fighting against climate change, fighting for justice. We have to follow their leadership and follow their lead and fight for clean air, clean water, healthy soil, because our lives depend on it. And that's why we're all here, because we care deeply about these issues. So let's give it up for our panelists here. I'm going to introduce Tom. Take it away, Tom.
Thanks, great to be here. I just add something about, I teach water and water policy, and I always tell people the importance of salmon that we have around here. It's been important to the Indigenous peoples for thousands of years, but also because of salmon, we have people spending time and energy trying to make the habitat better. So if you like orcas, then they rely on salmons. And I tell people that we're a unique situation in the U.S. where the Indigenous peoples, the tribes, have been recognized legally and granted their authority to be co-managers. So if you go fishing for salmon, you got to wait until there's agreements between the tribes and the state. They're co-managers, which is so very important because with the indigenous peoples really seeing the value of salmon and being in a position of co-managers, they've been doing a lot of research and funding and hatcheries and all kinds of things to protect the salmon, which therefore protects all the other parts of the ecosystem. So it's a really nice thing we have going here in this corner of the U.S., and I'm glad to see it moving forward, as was mentioned. So just a couple of just introductions, and then we'll hit the ground running here. I just want to mention today, you saw that folks up there on the screen. On my far left is Dennis Buckingham, and he's going to introduce himself in just a minute. And then we have Ruby Gabriel sitting next to him, and then we have Katie Henderson. So I'm going to actually start down at the end with Dennis. And the first question is just asking each person to just introduce themselves and the organization that you work with.
Well, hello and good morning. I work for Joint Base Lewis McChord Fish and Wildlife Program. We manage over 30 species of rare and listed animal on the base. A lot of people don't realize the Department of Defense, War, manages more endangered species than any other government agency per unit area or any other measure of species richness. So being a biologist on a military base is actually a huge honor and opportunity and just a cool thing to manage that island of biodiversity. And along the way, I've built an internship program for retiring active duty service members, military spouses, and college students from, 15-ish schools. And it's been a great thing helping restore species and landscapes and building careers.
Hello, everybody. My name's Ruby Gabriel. I work for the city of Tacoma, specifically in the Tidy Up Tacoma program. You may have seen some of our cute public garbage cans along the road. They have really fun wraps on them. And I get to oversee the Neighborhood Litter Patrol and Adopt a Spot program.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Katie Henderson. I'm here on the panel kind of representing the private sector. I work for a company called E2 Metrics. We are an equipment manufacturer. So we design water treatment equipment that we then build and sell to cities that treat drinking water and wastewater. And then we also will sometimes also install at industrial plants as well. And I am the general manager of a team that focuses specifically on the removal of PFAS or forever chemicals. It's what you maybe have heard of it before. It's kind of big in the news these days, but it's what was in like Teflon pans and Gore-Tex. And it's very, very toxic at low levels. And the government is now putting in regulations to have it be removed from drinking water so that it doesn't get into our bodies. And so my team that I run has been working on developing new technologies that removes PFAS, but also destroys it and gets rid of it forever. So that's what I get to do.
Great. Thanks, Katie. Yeah, it's one thing to make a law and policy, but then another to actually do it. So we need to figure out how to remove the PFAS, the little bitty chemicals. You were saying parts per trillion, right?
Parts per trillion, which is so small.
What was the thing you said about in the swimming pool, how much you'd be
Yeah, so the limits for the MCLs for PFOA and PFOS, which is two of these PFAS compounds, is set at 4.0 parts per trillion, which is equivalent to 4 drops of water in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That's how toxic these chemicals are. And so that's what my team's trying to do, is figure out how to remove it down to those levels in millions of gallons a day that we treat, that you then drink from your sink. So it's a pretty complex engineer challenge, but has real impact in a lot of communities that have been exposed to it.
So the first question, give a chance to start with Dennis again. The question is, what was your educational background and career path that led you to the current position? And then were there any unexpected turns or skills that proved more valuable than you thought?
I would say it has all been unexpected turns. The advice that I give people is like when a really cool opportunity that ignites your passion comes along, you just grab it and hold on to it and see where it takes you. And then when the next one resonates with you, you move there and you end up in a really cool career. Like I did this thing with endangered butterflies at a women's prison. I never saw that coming, but it was a really cool thing. And it's launched me into this other thing where I'm doing, engagement outreach with military members on, endangered landscapes. So I didn't predict that or go for it, but that happened to me because I was waiting for that opportunity, and when I saw it, I swam over and grabbed it.
Can you give us a bit of background on your education and your career path?
The other part of the question. I am an Evergreen grad. I got my bachelor's there as well as my master's degree. I tell everyone Evergreen is a great school for motivated students. I always kind of like try to wiggle around the reputation of just being lazy anarchists, which, I mean, there's space for that too. But at Evergreen, I was able to publish peer-reviewed articles and do research and get involved in things because I made it happen. And Evergreen's a good school for that.
I started working at a water district right outside of high school. Um, I don't have a college education. I worked at the water district for 6 years. It's a very small municipality. So I was creating the monthly water bills and going out to our testing stations to check the chlorine levels. And after 6 years at the water district, I started with the city of Tacoma as a customer service representative. And after doing that for 3 years, I saw a job opening for community outreach liaison, and I only understood the community outreach part. I was like, I don't know what the word liaison means because I don't know big words, you guys. I'm just here, like, not pretending that I'm an expert about green anything. So I applied for the position, and after I stepped into it, found myself in these spaces that are green, right? Because I'm promoting folks, to pick up litter. And it's so interesting because when Olivia first asked me if I wanted to be a part of this, I felt as though I wasn't qualified. Um, but as I'm in more and more green spaces, I don't see people who look like me, which is why I felt that it was important for me to be here today. So that's how I ended up in my role. And there were lots of unexpected twists and turns, but here I am.
Yeah, I had kind of a similar journey where I couldn't have predicted this is for sure. When I did my undergrad at Utah State University, and at that point in time in high school, I thought it'd be really cool to design and build bridges. I wanted to be like, this is my bridge. And then I got into school, and I had the opportunity to go on a humanitarian trip to Paraguay. And while I was there, I started to see and realize how big water is. That I couldn't just, turn on the sink and drink the water, right? Like, these are things I just hadn't really spent a lot of time thinking about it. And so when I came back to Utah State, my classes that were about water were way more interesting. And so I made that pivot. I decided, hey, this is where my interest is. And I started talking to different professors that were focused on water and trying to figure out what I wanted to do in that space. And got involved with Engineers Without Borders, and started doing work in developing countries around water. And then I ended up applying for my master's, and I went to UC Berkeley, and I worked with a professor that did removal of arsenic in developing countries. And I really, really dove into the water side. And that's where I kind of got hooked on treating things that are really hard to treat. And really what I wanted to do was more developing country work. But when I got to the end of my master's, I realized that the issues in developing countries are way less around the technology, where I had really, really learned. They're more about developing these programs to make it accessible. And so I ended up at this equipment manufacturing company working on treatment in the first world. And became really interested in contaminants that are hard to treat. So I think one thing, when you get to these decision points, just like you said, when opportunities present, you take them. And I think one of the things that's most helpful is don't be afraid to try something. Sometimes it's just as helpful to cross something off and be like, no, I don't want to do this. Turns out I don't want to design bridges. And if I had never taken that step, I wouldn't have progressed anywhere. So if opportunities come, try it out, and you might cross it off, but that's just as helpful as circling something.
Great, thanks. I'm hearing a theme that you kind of just wrapped up there a bit, Katie, for us. You're saying yes to stuff, and you're thinking about what do I think is interesting, and let me try this out. And I often talk to students about careers, and there might be this idea that to get to this career you want, you've got to go up this trail. But I always tell students there's lots of little trails, and most of them are going to lead up to the same lookout. And you might be on a trail once, and then you see another trail, and so you let me try that for a while. But we're no longer in a world where you have to pick something when you're 22 years old and then stick with it. In fact, that is the opposite of what you need to do. We talk about people being flexible and nimble, and I think this is a great example of finding things that you're like, I think they might hire me to do it, even though I don't know what liaison. I don't know what a liaison is either. I don't know everything in this job description, but I'm pretty good at what I'm doing, and so let me see if this is something I might want to do. And taking that leap, and then what I like to think about is, will this new job provide me a chance to learn some stuff? And if the answer is no, then that's probably not going to be a very interesting job. But if you're the kind of person who likes to learn things and have challenges, then there's probably some part of the new job that you're going to have no clue about, and that's maybe a good thing, right? You can learn into it. So did you want to add anything to that? No? Okay.
I can add just one piece. Like I feel like when I moved and started at the company Ovivo, I was like kind of sad, right? I like wanted to do this like developing country water work, and then I was like at an equipment manufacturer working in the U.S. mainly, and I think I still had that north arrow of like I want to do something in water to help people. And so even though that first role that I had in the company, I took a path that maybe wasn't like totally the right direction, but because that north arrow was there in that job, I was able to find a place that points more towards that. So, take opportunities even if it's not like the perfect fit.
It could be an opportunity for now.
Yeah.
And that might help lead to something else. Dennis, did you have something? Yeah.
Yeah. I will add this concept of lead from the bottom, because in my career, and I think it sounds like Katie really did too, is you see an opportunity that your employer or your boss could like really benefit from, but it's something that you can lead, is start this program and say like, hey, I think we can do this, and it's going to make both of us look great, and our company's going to move forward. And like nobody told me to start an internship program. They just showed me 99,000 acres and handed me a brush cutter. And I said, how about an internship program? And it's become the like world's largest environmental military volunteer program. It's a mouthful.
Cool. I've got a kind of related question. This is about skills. We think about skills. When you learn stuff, whether it's through college or on the job training, whatever, you're learning some skills. There's some of them are technical, and some of them, these sort of soft skills, might be more just kind of life skills, but still, even if it's life skills, you can probably learn more as you experience things on the job. So the question is about what skills, it can be technical and also soft skills, do you think you use most frequently in your work that you do? And are there any of those skills that you wish that you had developed earlier in your career? It would have been more helpful. And we'll start with Katie at this time.
Yeah. I've moved up from being like very technical into now more of a management leadership role. And so I think I'm really, really grateful for being involved in clubs in undergrad. I was a part of the leadership of the Society of Women Engineers, and that was such a safe place to learn how to lead, and be able to kind of pull people together and work through ambiguity. I feel like that's one of the things right now. I'm building something entirely new. No one's done it before. How am I supposed to do it? There's no clear-cut way. And so I think that's the piece that I struggle with, is leading my team through that ambiguity. And I am really grateful for the opportunities I got in being a part of clubs and leadership in clubs specifically. If you have a desire to be in a leadership role, get involved with it now at the level you're at, and try to get in. And it's a really safe space to learn and practice those soft skills.
Yeah, I'm not a technical girly at all. I'm like human being, right? So one of the things I get to do in my current role with the city is go to lots of community events, table, and share about how people can get involved with picking up litter. And oftentimes I get to go to events in underserved communities where if I use fancy green words, they're not going to want to pick up litter, right? So I'm usually starting a conversation, soft skills, asking them about their new Jordans they got on, or just whatever I can connect to them with. And then kind of, wiggling my way into, what do you think about picking up some litter on your free time? So, yeah, I just, having curiosity and finding a way to meet people where they're at are like the biggest skills that I use every single day.
I think my answer to the question is kind of about investing in people and building teams through making people feel empowered and giving them roles and developing their leadership, because in the particular field that I'm in, there's a lot of people that want to release, radio collared songbirds and that kind of thing. So a lot of people come to the program, but they may never have run a chainsaw or driven a four-wheel drive truck or whatever. And they would be like, you're the leader, and really building careers around me has made the program that I built really successful.
Thanks. I'm just pop back to something that Ruby was just talking about, is spending time figuring out how to reach people and how to coordinate and all those skills. They're called soft skills, but they're also very hard to do. So you kind of grow into them. And I was thinking about what Livia does in her role here. Livia has some good technical skills, but also a lot of her work is how to motivate people. And a lot of that's making those connections. And that's a very different set of some skills that you might go to school to learn about how to be an engineer or how to do biology, but it all gets kind of rolled together in different ways in these different jobs. And that leads me to the next question, which is, not everybody here in the room is majoring in environmental science related fields. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on how sustainability might be appearing in other lines of work, or if you don't have a specific background that you've always been doing environmental stuff, how that might still be a potential way for people to contribute to some level to sustainability, even without like majoring in environmental type of thing. So we'll start with Dennis on this one.
Well, I think I would say it gets back to the lead from the bottom thing. Like, even if your company is not doing sustainability stuff, that doesn't mean that you can't start their brown bag lunch program or their, get people involved on the side in sustainability initiatives and steer the culture in that way. I think that often people start new jobs and they don't feel that their voices are. I made a mistake once early in my career, and there was an endangered frog, basically, and I was in these working group meetings with all these professional biologists and zoologists from these institutions, and I should have spoken up more, because we need the young, powerful voices in the room to help steer like immediate action and make a decision now, because if we don't make it now, like, this opportunity might slip through our fingers. And I think often those voices don't get heard. So lifting those up is, I'm not sure I'm answering the question, but there's my answer.
Thanks.
Well, can you repeat the question? I'm kind of like, I'm like, what?
Being an environmental science major, how might you still do a part of the thing called
Yes.
sustainability? Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Um, well, I started volunteering with the Tacoma Tree Foundation because I heard about it through a friend that I had made through work, and found out that I really loved planting trees once a quarter with Tacoma Tree Foundation. And so, not directly related to my job, other than that I heard about it through a coworker. Um, but I feel like that's a really great way to have your little footprint on making a better environment. And also, the city of Tacoma has a rideshare program that provides Orca passes to employees. And so I'm sure, I believe it's through Pierce County, but if you just Google rideshare program, I'm sure lots of other organizations would be interested in connecting with that group to, provide rideshare options to their employees.
Oh yeah. I think about just like all the different roles within my company. Like there's a lot of engineers, but we also have like finance and purchasing and all these different people all playing a piece. So when it comes to incorporating sustainability into your job, I think it's looking at like the decisions and the influence you have and bringing in sustainability as like part of your evaluation, right? Like let's say my purchasing department, they need to ship a lab coat to site. They might look when they're evaluating lab coats about what's the distance to ship it from one site to another, or is this fabric more environmentally sustainable? Like she has that leeway to make those kind of decisions, right? As long as like the price is somewhat similar, she has the option to make those decisions. So I think in any role that you have, you can incorporate that into your decision making matrix, and also try to be an advocate for the company to incorporate those things into their decision making. So really, any job you have, you can bring that influence and impact.
Great, thanks. That reminds me of something I was reading about careers and what advice to give people looking to start their careers. And one thing I read said there's sort of two general categories. One is you're working in a sector like Katie is that does the environmental cleanup stuff. The other possibility was that you work for a company that isn't about environmental cleanup or sustainability, but you in there are going to do some things to help the organization do its work in a more sustainable way. And most of the stuff that gets done in this country is done by companies. The government's doing a lot, but think about all the people employed in all the companies, big and small, all over the US. If those companies had people in them who were doing some things to kind of champion and support sustainability, then that could have a big impact, even if the company is not involved in the business of doing sort of environmental cleanup, for example. So I wanted to touch on something else that Ruby and Dennis were just highlighting, and maybe Katie, this is in your background too, is volunteering. If you're thinking about what happens when you walk across the stage and get your diploma, and then if you think the next thing is you get a job, don't forget there's stuff around that where you're looking for a job, but also you're also doing a volunteer work. And I know that Dennis and Ruby just mentioned the role of volunteering. I know, Dennis, you're in charge of organizing the volunteering, and Ruby, you mentioned how you started out kind of volunteering. And I always encourage students in this sphere to find opportunities to volunteer. And even if you work in something like a bank that doesn't have much to do with environmental stuff, if you're passionate about water, if you're passionate about fish, or you're passionate about clean air, whatever it is, there are organizations for you to lend your time and talents to. Not because they're going to pay you, although eventually maybe there will be jobs there, but because it's something you can do to scratch that itch in your brain, which is like, I care about these things. And the job that I had to take now to put food on the table doesn't seem like there's a lot of places to go that I want to go. But in the meantime, I'm going to be doing this volunteer stuff. And doing the volunteer work for local groups can help you do the thing that you want to do and follow your heart, but also can give you opportunities to get jobs in that sector, whether that's because now you've got a bit of experience, like the shop that Dennis runs. I'll tell a little story. My daughter, my middle child, went to get a master's degree in wildlife management and succeeded, and then came back to the Northwest to look for a job. All the jobs she was looking for, there were two kinds of jobs. One job is you don't need any experience. We just want you to, have a high school degree and you don't need further college. And she's like, I went 6 years and spent on this master's. I kind of want to get something that's more than that. The ones that had master's degrees all wanted 3 years experience. So she was stuck in no man's land. She had the degree, but she didn't have the experience. So she was poking around, applying for jobs, and in the end, started volunteering with Dennis's organization. Not as an intern. She wasn't getting credit. She just volunteered. And she spent some time, some months there, going in several days a week. Thought it was really cool work, really hard work, as Dennis knows, literally pulling Scotch broom and all kinds of things you do to restore things. And so
And butterflies,
and
come on.
there's fun stuff too, but it's work. And I've had a lot of students that I advise who have done internships, and they write a weekly blog. And by the end of it, there's really cool stuff they're talking about. Often the first entry is like, man, this is physically challenging. It's like, yes, it is. So my daughter had a chance to do that. And after a couple of months, there was an opportunity opening up in AmeriCorps, and the people that were choosing the AmeriCorps folks were people she would already work with. So she had that experience. So she turned the volunteering on base directly into AmeriCorps on base. And now she's in her second year. And now when she gets done in summer, the idea is she'll have several years under her belt. So for some people, volunteering can be literally the bridge that gets you there. For others, volunteering might not be so direct, but it might give you opportunities to start working in the space and start meeting people and showing what you can do, and then getting your resume to show those things. And then that makes you more likely you're going to get a job, something in that area. So I think volunteering, we can't say enough about volunteering. Did you do volunteering stuff as part of your journey at all? You didn't really mention it, Katie.
Yeah, I did a lot of volunteering just within clubs, within my college, and those helped me land internships, which then gave me the experience to land and get into a good master's program, which then opened up so many doors for me on the back end. So yeah, anywhere where you can get in, and like, don't be afraid to go pester people. Like like, you want to go do something, you really like the work that someone's doing, like go talk to them, reach out. More than likely, they're going to make the time to talk to you if you've got the passion and create opportunity for you. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. What's the worst they can do? They can just say no and you can go find someone else to pester.
Okay. So I'm well aware that we live in a world that seems like it's on fire, literally sometimes. Climate change and all the ills. You look at any news of the day, things are bad out there. So I want to say that sustainability tries to be optimistic and tries to say, where can we chip away at this big thing that we're trying to fix? And some of it's individual personal stuff, but a lot of it is more systemic stuff and amplifying what you do to sort of create some ripples around you so that other things can change and things can be a little bit different and a little bit better. And so it occurs to me that in this field, there could be days where just things are not looking very good. We're really kind of fighting an uphill battle and things like, seems like things may be getting worse rather than getting better. So a question about this is, I'm going to ask each of you, what's one of the biggest challenges you face in your work? And how do you stay motivated when progress can sometimes feel very slow or these obstacles can seem too gigantic? So, what's the biggest challenges, and then how do you stay motivated going forward? And we'll start with Katie.
Sure. I think the biggest challenges that I face is also one of the biggest benefits is I work for a pretty big company. And so getting things like approved, like the day to day, I've been waiting for approval for this new pilot since January and it's driving me crazy. And so sometimes just get so frustrated with the day to day of just going through the paperwork, if you will. But I feel really lucky in that I can always ground myself on the mission of what we're trying to do. Like, we're trying to bring clean water to these communities that don't have good solutions. And so if you're able to find a job that you got that little nugget, it'll get you through the hard days. So find a mission that you align with, and that really helps. Even with the world news and everything, I feel overwhelmed and powerless. But I know that, hey, I'm really good at this one thing, and if I really focus on this, I can make real impact in this world. And that helps me go outside and see the sun and have a little bit of hope that there's other people out there doing their thing to help make this world a little better. So I'm gonna play my part.
I think one of the biggest challenges that folks experience while volunteering to pick up litter within Tacoma is all of the homelessness and community groups oftentimes cleaning up an area on a Saturday, only for the following Saturday it to be riddled with litter again, or residuals from a homeless encampment that is moved to a different space. However, in participating in some of the litter cleanups, the community that's built by these folks that are volunteering their time and getting to know their neighbors is so, once again, not a big word girly, but like creates that hope, right? That we are doing something, even if it doesn't feel like we're doing something. I love yours. I don't know who you are with the glasses in the middle, but your smile's like everything to me while I'm trying to find my words. So thank you for that. And so, yeah, I think just it's a lot easier to find hope when you get in community with people and just chip away at things, one straw, one plastic bottle, one McDonald's wrapper at a time.
That's a great answer. I'm a little bit of an awkward space because I'm on camera and I'm a federal employee and I work for Pete Hegseth. So things are challenging being a biologist for the Department of War. Um, I would say some of that, like we have a shifting voice, some of it like we can't say sustainability anymore. We can't say climate change, but we can say natural hazards abatement. And I can write grants. I got the same grants that I got 3 years ago by talking about promotes military readiness and the warfight supports the warfighter by counting butterflies. But you can, like if you're good with your scripting, you can still get that work done even as you weather the storms that may blow across your sector.
Thanks, Dennis. That's something I think about a lot because I teach this stuff and I teach about the Constitution, and we're living in a moment where these things come up more than they ever should, and so we need to know about these things. So I appreciate that. I'm going to echo what you just said, Dennis, about finding a workaround in how you frame your message. You guys probably know this already from your courses and stuff. Like if you're trying to get something done and communicate and ask for something, the first thing to do is know your audience. So, Dennis, you just mentioned rephrasing how you ask for something to figure out what the people who you're trying to get traction with, what goal they have in their mind. How can you speak to that? That's a powerful way to get stuff done, even if it means giving up what you feel in your heart is the right way to talk about it. Like, damn it, we should talk about climate change. There are a lot of places in the US that have a lot of people working hard on dealing with climate change, but they're in a political culture where they don't use the word climate change. They say increased droughts over time, increased flooding over time. Because if you're in certain parts of the country and you say, we want to fix climate change, you're going to lose people. So you have to think about your audience and adjust this. That's I like that adaptability. And then I want to just connect it a bit to what I heard from Ruby and Katie. Both of you were talking about like carrying on in different ways. Katie, you mentioned that, finding a way to think about, I'm going to do my part, even if I don't know, I can't visibly see other people. I trust that there are people in lots of spaces that are doing their part. So I'm going to do what I do best. And then I just know, I feel comfort in knowing that other people are working too. And together we're going to make a difference. And that's sort of the opposite of what Ruby was saying is find your people, find your community. And I think both of these are really great to keep in mind. Find your community of people who are like-minded and want to sort of do the same things that you want to do and work together and build community. And that's where everything starts, local community, right? Whatever you think about what's going on the national level today, it's all got to start local level. That's how it's ever gotten done with environmental movement, I can tell you. It's starting with local stuff. So finding your community is powerful and it can make you feel a lot better. And then, as Katie said, even if you don't work with your community on this all the time, I feel like I'm doing my bit and I know other people that I don't know their names, but they're doing stuff. So together moving forward. So all of these I think are really great ways to think about being hopeful. The next question is, it's a hopeful question, I guess. It's, can you share a specific project or moment in your career where you felt that you were making a tangible difference in your community or for the environment, sort of some specific thing that you can they can use as sort of a mental shield against all the bad thoughts that might be trickling in from everywhere else. Like, I did this thing and it was really helpful. We can start with Dennis on this.
I would just say it's worth it to do a job that makes a difference, even if you don't get to buy that boat. I mean, I go home from work nurturing careers and landscapes, and I don't get paid great money, but when I travel around the world and I interact with all the people that are working and serving and doing their jobs, I'm in a 1% luckiest people that I just do some. So even if it's hard or you feel like, I don't know, that doesn't pay that well, feeling good when you go home and you're driving home is more invaluable than that bigger paycheck.
Hmm. A specific project. So every April, Tidy Up Tacoma partners with Litter Free 253 to do a citywide litter cleanup. And there are 8 different neighborhood councils within the city of Tacoma. So there are 8 different hubs where folks can go pick up supplies they need to clean up litter nearby. And Tidy Up Tacoma will go out and pick up the bags. But that specific annual event makes me feel like I'm a part of creating a tangible difference, seeing so many people come out just once a year to commit to 2 hours of cleaning. So, if any of you are available on April 25th from 9 to 11, we're in a neighborhood near you. Um, but it's moments like that where I get to see people connecting with their neighbors and just, doing their part, even if it's a little bit. Um, it's very rewarding.
Yeah, I thinking about something where I made a tangible difference. So what I'm working on right now is still in the development stage. So we're trying to get our first installation of our technology. But one really impactful moment that I had, I work a lot in this community in Alabama. That has a PFAS manufacturing facility that is right on the river, and then the drinking water plant takes in the water right downstream. And the one of the people that works at the plant, their partner was diagnosed with cancer and died in 3 weeks, and this was like the third time that they had cancer. And I'm sitting in this room with all these operators talking about how tragic this is, like that this person got sick and passed away so quickly. And I'm in this room, and every single person is like my aunt, my uncle. They had the same thing, and faster is better because like theirs dragged on for years. And I just had this moment thinking like this conversation in this community is not normal. Like I don't go to other places and every single person is impacted with cancer. And so sometimes with this thing that I'm working on, it's not something you can see. You can't smell it, you can't taste it. And so it's hard to contextualize the impact of it sometimes. And I get people that challenge me, like, is this really an issue, And I know in that moment being there that I am working on something that's really important. And while it's not going to have immediate impact on those people there, it will in there for their kids. And so for generations to come, the solutions that I'm working on will have impact. So that is like such a cool thing. And it's really cool when I get the opportunities to go to the communities and work with these people that are suffering because of these contaminants in their water. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Thanks. I'm going to follow up a little bit. Dennis, you undersold a little bit. I was hoping you'd say a little bit about the women's prison and the butterfly, because maybe that's not the thing that you think is the most important you've done, but it's just such a cool story. If you would maybe share a bit about that.
Yep, that is a specific example. I looked back at your question. I was like, yeah, I didn't answer that question. When I was a grad student at Evergreen, there's a program there called the Sustainability in Prisons Project that brings science and environmental education into prisons. And when I started there, they were involved in captively rearing Oregon spotted frogs for release, as well as prairie plants for restoration projects throughout the Salish lowland prairies. And I piloted a new program for them at the time, captively rearing federally endangered butterflies, which are now federally endangered, with women at the prison. I designed the greenhouse and the facility. I went to the Oregon Zoo, developed the protocol. I captively reared butterflies in the Evergreen lab to develop the protocol, taught it to the inmates that I hired, stewarded the program through its first 3 years, crushed every deliverable. Like they were like 50% will be success. We're 98% successful from egg to release. Hit 180% of our release target numbers. I think released 7,000 butterflies or something like that. So those first 3 years, that was pretty awesome to be involved. Oh, and I did my master's thesis there and had inmate co-authors on a peer-reviewed scientific article.
Yeah, I mean, those are nice direct impacts. And I think it's a smattering, really. I think there's stuff that you can look back and say, man, this year I really crushed it. These things I did were impactful. And then other times you do stuff and you're like, I think it mattered. I don't actually know. Maybe eventually it'll pay off. Or like I'm an instructor, I'm a professor, so I have a lot of great students I work with, and I think they're going to do great things, and I don't always know. And so they might pop up years later, like, I'm doing this cool thing. I'm like, oh, maybe I had a little hand in nudging you. So I think it is really a mixture of stuff. Some days you can see stuff tangibly, and others, like I believe in, like you mentioned, your North Star, or sort of your true direction of like, this is the mission that I have for myself. And I'm going to try to align my actions with that through my work and also through things outside of work. And then together, hopefully, the whole combination makes you feel like, yeah, I'm happy with the things I'm doing. And I know I haven't fixed all the world's problems, but man, I haven't really made them worse. And I'm actually trying to chip away at making them a bit better. I have one more general question, then we'll wrap up with a sort of advice question. So it's just sort of a bit, I guess, a bit more practical. Thinking about the different places where people get jobs related to environment and sustainability, where do you see some opportunities for growth for careers in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? Which I think to folks in the audience may seem like a forever time, but really 5 to 10 years, it's. I think it's a nice time frame to try to think out a little bit. And maybe we'll start with Katie a bit and just work down. And what do you see as places where maybe there's some opportunities for growth in these so-called green industries?
Yeah, I think one cool place that I'm seeing grow within my company, we are owned by a German company, and in Germany, we have to, all German companies have to track their greenhouse gas emissions, and they have different set points of what they have to track. And so, because we're owned by them, our company is starting to do that. Yesterday, I was filling out the emissions for my pilots. And so I think you're going to see more of that. And maybe Europe's going to kind of lead the way. But I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for like sustainability, tracking, decision making, that's going to continue to grow in the private sector. So which I'm excited about, something that always felt kind of like maybe that'll happen, but I'm starting to see it happen at my company, which is cool.
Well, once again, the people person here, and I think that growth opportunities within green careers specifically could improve with some more diversity. So I'm hopeful that within the next 5 to 10 years, I will see that.
I don't really want to follow that. I've been called a pathological optimist, so I think that when we weather this administration, there will be a surge in environmental sector and green sector jobs. And so, if it were me during this time, I would be quietly building a resume and staying poised for that moment.
Makes sense. That really resonates with me too, because I used to suggest students really look hard at federal jobs and what's happening to federal agencies over the last year. I'm like, no, 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 don't do that now. But as you said, these political winds always change. They always have, and I presume that they will continue to do so. There's going to be a huge lack of trained professionals in the federal government agencies in a couple of years. And I don't know if that means there's going to be a lot of job openings, but there's a lot of cool places to work in government, which is the kind of the area that I know best, at state and local levels. So I think those big shifts in the political winds have these cycles that come and they go. It sucks if you're the one starting a job search during a time when it's not favorable for you. But if you're doing things and filling in the cracks, finding things to do, and building a resume, as Dennis said, is a great way to put it, you'll be poised to then take advantage of some opportunities as they come down the line. And I think it'll be before 5 years is up. I'm hopeful that that's going to be the case anyway. All right, great. So sort of the kind of last wrap-up question is, what advice would you give to a student sitting here today who wants to make a positive environmental impact through their career, but isn't sure where to start? So we can start here with Katie on this one.
My advice is similar to what I said earlier. Just find things to do. Cross them off if you don't like them. I've seen a lot of my peers get stuck in indecision, and then they don't make any progress. So don't be afraid to commit to something if you're not feeling 100% sure that you'll be able to cross it off if you decide you don't like it. So yeah, that's my advice.
I wish I had a more original answer, but I'm going to piggyback off of Katie and encourage everyone to try new things, get plugged in with different local community groups, organizations, nonprofits, so you can learn what fuels your passion?
Well, I kind of have to pitch the internship on this one. But I do also want to say that whole thing about 100% certainty, that's like one of the foundational principles in like getting stuff done is don't wait till you're 100% certain. 80% certainty and then make some mistakes along the way and learn from those and you'll be way ahead of the people that wait till they're 100% sure. I've seen that happen in biology where they waited for the 100% solution and then the wave of some other thing happened 2 years later and the program didn't work out or whatever and they should have taken action back in those frogs. Um, and then I just will say I am in the business of building careers, and we do everything from park ranger to hunting manager to endangered species biologist to forester to every natural resource thing under the sun. So if you want to come volunteer, I'm available.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'll second that. If you can get plugged into places, when I talk to students who are about to graduate, it's weird because if you've been a student, if you've been a full-time student, maybe you're juggling a job too. You're kind of maxed out in all your time, and a lot of your time is scheduled for you. You got classes to go to. You have midterms on this day. Your reports due on this day. You have things scheduled out, and you're stressed out, and you're going maximum speed. And then you cross the stage in graduation, and things it's a whole new world, right? Like, oh, I don't have to be somewhere at 8 a.m. on Tuesday on campus anymore. What am I going to? And this can be a very disconcerting time. It sounds wonderful when we're in the middle of the quarter, but it can be very disconcerting for students to all of a sudden be like, I'm done. Now what? I don't have a job yet. Oh, now what? And I think this is a good time to start making some of the plugged in, as Dennis said, get plugged in, find your people, find places to volunteer. Partly because it'll help you move your career, but partly for your own sake of your own psychological well-being. I think just having vast spans of time where you're not really doing the career you hope for, and yet you don't feel like you're making progress, I think that's really difficult. So I always encourage students before you walk across the stage, think about what are you going to do the week. Okay, maybe the next week you can just celebrate, but then the second week after you graduate, what are you going to be doing to make sure that you're starting to do stuff? And I always encourage students to get connected through informational interviews, which is basically spending a half an hour on the phone or maybe at the person's office, just chatting with someone about their career. What do you like about your job? What do you think the biggest challenges are? What advice do you have? What sectors are hiring? I have this in my toolkit. Who's hiring? And getting a chance to talk to those people. And each person you talk to, then you end the interview by thanking them and asking them to suggest one or two more people. Now you've got a series of people who you can say, oh yeah, Katie referred me to you. She said you'd be a good person to talk to about this career I'm interested in. Can I spend half an hour chatting with you? And most people in this sector are in it because they've a passion for it. So they're not going to deny giving you 30 minutes of their time. They're going to be happy, like, cool, I found a fellow traveler in this journey. Yes, let me talk to you. And you start talking to people, that sort of fills out your schedule a bit. Like, okay, next Wednesday at 2 p.m., I'm going to do a Zoom call with this person. And then on Thursday, so now you've started to put scheduling in your week after graduation, and you're also sort of making some progress. So that's some practical things I like to give students advice to kind of do. And it could apply to whatever career you're in. I know this is about green jobs, but it could be about whatever you're in. So there's stuff to do, and I think that's the good news. As tired and stressed as you are right now, I think you should feel happy that there's going to be more activity and stuff to do after you graduate, because that's kind of why most of us are here, right? You want to work towards something. And so imagine getting some nice, not your dream career, but some nice jobs that make up a dream career. It's probably not going to be the first place you apply to, right? But as you meander along the next several decades, hopefully you're going to have opportunities, like these folks have all said, to try stuff that's new and be able to learn some new skills along the way. So yeah, so I think that's a good way to wrap up this portion. Livia, did we want some audience Q&A as part of this?
Hello? Okay, I have a microphone. If anybody has a question, I'll bring it to you and you can ask these fine panelists your question. I'm going to let you guys reflect for a minute. I asked my colleague Alex before he was leaving if he had any questions, just in case this happened. He wanted to know what somebody like him could do, somebody like him being a person who doesn't work in a field related to environmental anything, could do to make his work more green, more sustainable? That was his question for you guys.
Kind of similar to what I said before, it's like understanding what you have decision making power over in your job, and then trying to bring sustainability into that matrix. If you can, like the purchasing example, if something is the exact same price and one's a shorter shipping distance, you pick that one, right? And that's like small little incremental things that you can do along the way, that help. And the next piece is always like advocate, pitch an idea, pitch a sustainability. This summer, we're going to partner with the city of Tacoma and pick up litter on Thursdays. And like nothing's going to happen until somebody brings an idea. So bring it to the table.
Steer the company. I mean, lead from the bottom and be like, we could do this and we'll all look really good together. And this is a cheap and innovative solution that's going to draw attention in the right way to what we're doing, is really powerful. And I'll just say also what Tom said about that's some really, really great networking advice, because a lot of people that I observe inside the sort of government biology sphere have been there for 25 years, would like nothing more than to feel like they're contributing to someone else's journey, like far from being an annoyance. That would lift someone's day and be just an incredible networking opportunity, whether you're starting out on the job hunt or you're in something unrelated but want to steer your career like edge towards something that's a little bit more of a hybrid between what you're doing and something sustainable, is to find networking partners in that sphere.
Any questions?
Hi, this is towards Dennis. I didn't know that the Joint Base Lewis McChord had like a what's it called, Fish and Wildlife program. Do they have, like, if a person wants to go into that field, do they have to be part of the military, or like if they're like fresh out of grad, how does the process work in order to um start that journey?
Well, it's real easy. You don't have to be anything to do with the military. We arrange access for people to come onto base, and we go out and do all kinds of stuff throughout the year. In fact, many people don't realize that military land, in accordance with the Sykes Act, is public land when not scheduled for military activities. So hunting, fishing, recreation, bird watching, bike riding is all available in the JBLM training areas when not scheduled. So that's also part of my role, is managing all the recreation that happens on base and all the hunting and fishing. I'm from the endangered species side, so I focus more on that, but I'm also in charge of all the hunters. Where are the elk, Dennis? I'm not telling you that. So yes, you can be involved, and we just get people, and just people come according to their schedule. 2 days a week is the minimum that we're doing now for folks. But we have students, contract students from here, as well as Evergreen, Green River College capstone students, summer internship program with University of Puget Sound, students from all different campuses working together with like-minded active duty military members that are getting out. And it's really a cool bridge where people are growing, towards engaging people with a different political leaning and working together as more of a community and finding common ground, and service members getting out and learning that actually they're not that different from their college attending peers, and students gaining leadership skills over fieldwork projects. And I'm at risk of rambling, so I'm going to stop now. But
No, that's great, Dennis. And I'll just second that. My daughter was like, we're not a military family, and so we don't really know much about the military culture. I teach a lot of students, so I've been learning it about what it's like in there. But I don't really have any direct family members who have had a military career. So my daughter hasn't really been exposed to that. But she's talking about these guys are kind of like advising her if she should join the military, don't go to the Army, go to the Navy. So she's like, I'm not joining the military. But it was just cool to hear her describe this mixed group of people who would go out and do some physical labor on the landscape, or maybe collecting butterflies, or helping checking the nesting boxes and bluebirds, all kinds of cool stuff. But she really got a lot of interesting perspective, just like you said. The military folks who know their military world, but the civilian world to them might seem kind of scary, just like a civilian might think the military world's a little scary. And there's an opportunity to interact doing something that they all like, which is, that doesn't happen a lot in our society. So I think it's a nice spot to kind of mix together folks with different perspectives that have something in common, and then they figure out how to work together.
Add one thing, tail on that. So wildlife biology is a cool field where you have very conservative hunting groups and very liberal university-based academic groups that are both passionate about preserving species and preserving landscapes, and are in some cases good at building bridges toward one another. But the more they do so, the more they stand to really gain traction. My wife was a policy communications director of the Nature Conservancy, and they're really good at involving Republican stakeholders in all of their initiatives. And that's why they gain traction and get things passed, is because they really engage audiences. So getting the opportunity to work in this environmental sector with people that aren't in the same echo chamber is really good for not only your own sort of broadening of your perspective, but gaining the perspective that makes you look like a real leader in the field, because you're good at seeing stakeholders from different audiences.
Anybody else have a question?
So for Ruby, how were you able to make money while volunteering?
That's a great question. I didn't start volunteering until after I had started working. And so because I didn't go to college and I just started working right out of high school, fortunately, I've always had jobs that allowed me to have the weekends off. And so I would usually volunteer on the weekends. But um, I there's just so many groups out there that I'm sure have lots of options and days of the week and times of the day for folks to volunteer. That I'm sure you can find, whatever lights your fire, you can find some time frame to squeeze that in. I hope. Does that answer your question?
I thought I saw another hand up here.
For Katie, did you always want to be in a leadership position? And like, what makes you think you're well equipped for that?
Good question. Sometimes I wonder if I'm well equipped for it. I don't know if I always wanted to be in a leadership position. But I think when I applied for, I was like the president of the Society of Women Engineers. I found out that I was like pretty good at it, at bringing people together, and we made like a bunch of changes to the club that year. We brought more money. We were able to like fly everybody out to this event, and it was just like cool to be a part of and have influence in that. And I think that's what I like about the leadership, is the influence piece. And kind of like all of the problems that I have are probably all the problems that I've made, and that makes it easier for me to get through them, right? So I'm enjoying the leadership piece, but I have jumped into that very quickly. I'm 6 years at the company, leading like a 30-person team now. So am I doing it perfectly? Absolutely not. It's been trial by fire, but I have really good mentors that I've identified that help me in that piece. And that's actually one place where I'm like really focusing and trying to grow right now, is in my ability to lead, because I'm technically trained. And so now I'm really focused on like empowering my team. So it's like I'm always learning, and that's what I like about it.
Anybody else? Any takers?
So this is a question for all three of you. Higher ed has been pretty impacted by funding differences over the past 2 years or so. I'm really curious because you guys are all such, it's a very diverse range of sectors that you work in, from the Department of War, which has been very lethal the past few years, the public sector, and also the private sector. How those funding differences have impacted you guys all uniquely, and how you think it might change over the next 5 to 10 years.
My situation's pretty unique because Tidy Up Tacoma, the program that I work for, is funded by a 6% excise tax that's applied to all the solid waste utility bills. And garbage service isn't going to go away. So while I'm sure we will be impacted, I'm not really sure what that will look like.
A little bit on the private sector. Um, so the municipalities that buy our equipment, it's typically federal funding or state funding. And so there has been like a drawback of that funding as of recent. But typically what we see is like when that side starts to come down, then like industry starts to wrap up. So we tend to find more industrial projects and then they kind of switch. So I'm pretty lucky to be buffered in that way. And I think you kind of do have that benefit per se sometimes in the private sector, but you have more job protections in the private sector. So I haven't seen a huge impacts, but we are typically like delayed a few years. Like the projects I work on today won't be installed for 8 years. So everything's pretty slow moving in the work that I do.
Funding security is a concern. I don't know what to say really about it, except it's not been a good couple of years. We've been moved to the very bottom of the public works funding priorities. Again, just like don't use AI to keyword search what I say. Because endangered species, we've been worried from day one that somebody at the Department of War is going to be like, wait, endangered species, what? Like we're spending money on, well, and that's why we've been really careful to switch all to this military readiness and warfighter support. I will say that's a little more insightful than that. One of the reasons we've been really successful at weathering some of these storms is we have gotten a lot of projects pre-approved. So sometimes funding can come in these windfall moments, and if you're not poised to receive them, at least in our area, it can be like you have 7 hours. Like who in this country can spend $700,000 in the next 4 hours? And we'll say we can. And the reason that we say we can is because we already have a project approved through the Army Corps of Engineers that has a bunch of unfunded optional task orders, but they're approved. So we can raise our hands and say, yes, we're going to now fund task order 6A through D and 7 or whatever. And that's why the last 2 years running, and in general, a lot of years, this whole late money thing will happen at the end of the fiscal year where some money is unspent and we're just waiting for it. So just don't get hired at another base and do that and steal our money.
Anybody else? Okay, I think I'm going to close us out then. I would encourage you, once we finish up, to come introduce yourself to our panelists, say hi, learn more about them, get their business card, give them your contact information. There's a lot of food left, so I hope you all will take some home as well. One theme that I saw coming up that we didn't really name is grief. In this field, you come across a lot of really challenging things, whether it's the families that you were talking about who are being poisoned by PFAS, or working with communities who are going out and they're interacting directly with homeless people. They're interacting directly with, a lot of pain and suffering in the world. And all of this covert sort of stuff that has to go on to make this work happen. It can be very challenging. And there's also, I heard you guys talk a lot about transformation, about the transformational power of this work when you bring people together across and you build bridges and you create networks of relationships and connections. So that's what this is all about. Trying and trying again. It's a fight. It's a constant fight to fight for our resources and our planet and our right to exist in a healthy environment. But I'm glad you all made the time to come here today and learn about this and take some steps for your careers. So thank you all so much for your time. And please feel free to mingle. Thanks, everybody.